Hello. Well, I have a couple of remote controls here. So what you'd say, these are very rare, very expensive and very special. You might think they're normal remote controls, but they're not. Us mortals are not even supposed to know these things exist, let alone get our hands on them. Let me show you what's special about them. What I have here are a couple of remote controls that are intended for use by service departments. They're not consumer remote controls. This one is intended for use with JVC DVD recording equipment, of which I have plenty, and it can send out some special remote control codes. A lot of this is written in Japanese, which is unhelpful, but the service manual does tell us how to operate this, so I'll play with that one later. This one's even more exciting. It's based on a standard RM-95 remote control, which was used with cameras from the 80s, 90s, up to about the noughties. But this is not the normal one. This sticker here is factory fitted. Instead of the hold button operating, just holding the key functions, it switches it into a special remote control mode where it can communicate with the processor in Sony Digital and analog equipment. For example, their high 8 decks, camcorders and other equipment that uses the very popular LANC connection, LANC. So what I'm going to do, hopefully, is test this and demonstrate it and show how we can change the internal functions of a camcorder. So this particular remote control, it's based on the RM-95. It's called RM-95 Adjust, which is a bit of a strange name. They really should have given it a better model name. Now, one of the things that people would like to get hold of these for was, there was a time when camcorders sold in Europe and the UK were hobbled unless you paid extra for certain features. And a typical one was that a camcorder, a mini DV camcorder, has a DV output socket, but it was only ever able to output data, not record data. You couldn't use it for backing up tapes from another camcorder, for example. And the reason was that the taxation system considered a camcorder to be a camera and was taxed as such. But a camcorder that had DV in, then it became a video recorder, a different device, and was taxed at a higher rate. So Sony and other manufacturers, Canon was another one, would disable the ability to record DV in on those camcorders sold in Europe or UK unless you paid the extra tax effectively on a different model. So it was a nice trick. You could get hold of a special remote control like this, and if you knew the right settings inside the camera, you could re-enable that DV in. Another thing that could be re-enabled on certain camcorders would be to allow it to do electrical to electrical. So whereas it was designed to, on something like a digital 8 camcorder, it was designed that it could go from analog on the tape. On most digital camcorders can play, digital 8 camcorders can play analog tapes and output a digital signal. You could also enable it so that you could feed an analog input signal into the camcorder and it would digitize that too. So that's a nice extra feature. So that's something else that could sometimes be enabled. Right, let's see if I can get this to work. What I'm going to do is try it on a camcorder that's not desperately precious to me. It's a high 8 camcorder, model TRV36E, and I've looked at the service manual, and there's a particular feature or a test mode in this where you can set it so that it will play even when it hasn't got a tape in there, which of course is completely alien. Normally if you put a tape in a camcorder it'll play, if you take the tape out it won't. But with this remote control, I'm hoping I can bypass that check to make it go into play mode even without a tape, and that'll demonstrate that I'm doing it right. Let's see if we can get that to work. Here we have the camcorder, which has got a power supply, and this remote control with the 2.5mm LANC connector. Now, one of the things I needed to mention here is you can do serious damage with this. you set some of the functions incorrectly, you can trash the camcorder completely. So you need to be a little bit careful. A great many of the settings are listed in the service manual. They're for things that you wouldn't want to touch anyway. There's a lot of complexity around setting up oscillator frequencies and video performance, and you'd have no reason to fiddle with them unless you'd been working on the camcorder and maybe changed a panel in there. The service manuals don't tend to cover everything. A great many of the codes that are available, or the memory addresses that are available, are hidden even in the service manual. For reasons of, for example, you being able to enable features that are not supposed to be enabled, or because they're terrified that you start poking about in there, you're definitely going to destroy the camcorder. But it's a pity, because I want a feature, I want to be able to disable a certain feature, which is the audio and video muting when the picture is poor, from a particular camcorder, and I suspect it's possible, but I don't know what the codes are or what the memory addresses are to do that. But anyhow, here we have the instructions on how to make this camcorder work without a tape. So let's just demonstrate this setup. I'll power up the camcorder. I've plugged this in and that fired up. Oh, let me show you. When you have it in the normal position, this remote control works as normal. So for example, I could switch on the data screen. There we go. And if I put a tape in, I can select play and stop and other functions. I'm not sure that was a very good tape, but it proves the point. Fine. But of course, when no tape is inserted, it will not go into play. I can do other things like reset the counter, but it won't play. Right, let's bypass that by following the instructions. One of the things it does say, there's two ways of adjusting the internal memories. You can do it temporarily, or you can store it, and to store it you press the pause button to store what you've just changed. Let's switch it over to the adjustment mode from normal, and it goes into this screen. And the way it's laid out on here, apparently it's a bit non-obvious. They have pages and data and addresses, and you'd imagine it would go page, address and data, but it doesn't. It's page and then the data that's in that address and then the address. And the way you change the page number is with these buttons. The way you change the address is with these buttons, and the way you change the data is with these buttons, according to the instructions. Let's give it a go. Right, so select, it says, page 0, address 01, and set the data to 01. So page 1, and then address 1. It doesn't seem to be working. I made a mistake. It should be page 0. It wouldn't let me change that one. Okay, good. Well, now we know. Page 0, address 1, and set the data to 1. Okay, I've done that. You don't need to store it. Then you go, it says, to page 4, F, sorry, this is all in hexadecimal. Page F, address 2A. If I hold it, does it? Yes. 2A, and presently the data held there is 0. Set it to 1, and then store it with the pause button. Okay. Then it says page D, address, well, it reads 10, but it means 10 because it's hexadecimal. And set the data to 10. Oh, it's bleeping. 10 and press the pause button. I hope I'm doing this right. Nothing seems to have happened. And then disconnect the power supply. Okay. So I guess what it's saying is it's going to remember this. Now, forevermore, until I switch this function off, it will be able to go into play without a remote, without a tape. So switch this to normal, or we could use these buttons, it doesn't matter. Press play, and if this has worked, it will go into play. Let's put the data screen on, press play. Yes! Now that would not have worked prior to this reprogramming. Switch it off. When you're finished, don't forget to switch it back to normal. That's what it's saying in its own Japanese way. So we'll switch this to the address position. Sorry, the adjust position. And undo this. So we need to go page 0. It's already on page 0, isn't it? Yes. Address 1, set data to 1. I think what that is doing is it's telling it to allow other things to be changed. Setting 0 to 1, 1 is telling it you will be accepting commands. Right, so 1 to 1. Okay, yeah. And then F2A needs to be set to 0. So F2A needs to be set to 0 and stored. Then D10 needs to be set to 0. D10 needs to be set to 0. Oh, it's doing the bleeping again. And then select page 0, address 1, so 0. Address 1 needs to be set to 0 again. And then power cycle the machine. Right. Put this back to normal operation. So if I press play, it should not go into play now. Ha! Good. So we've switched that feature on and off using the special remote control. Now the problem with these remote controls, of course, is they were very expensive. So they tended to be owned by businesses, fairly wealthy ones, who might do a lot of video equipment and camcorder repair. So if a normal user of a video recorder or a camcorder wanted to change one of the settings in their machine, this just wasn't something they could afford to do. So back in the day, there were some software workarounds for this. You'd build a little gadget that would plug into the parallel port of your computer and would connect to the LANC connection on a camera or video recorder and allow you to make changes, such as adding features, or one of the things they could do for some video recorders was change the remote control codes that that video recorder would respond to, which could be useful if you had, say, several video recorders and you wanted one remote control, infrared remote control, to work a particular machine. So if a user wanted to do that, they would use this software which would typically run under Windows 98, and so it becomes rather hard these days to support that kind of software. So a real solution like this is better. Now, the codes or the memory settings were not made generally public for most of the settings people wanted, and I'll include some information in the details below about some of the settings that were known for some of the more commonly required changes. But perhaps somebody from Sony or somebody who's worked with these a lot in the past might have some more information on the settings that are available for some popular equipment. So if anybody can give us more information that I'm allowed to share, that would be absolutely wonderful, because there doesn't seem to be very much information on the internet. Please, people, don't start asking me, oh, I want to do such and such a feature with a certain video recorder. I can't tell you if I haven't got it listed in the information for this YouTube video. Now, that's the Sony remote. I'd mentioned also this JVC one. This came in this box. It's brand new. Of course, you don't get the interaction with this because it's just an infrared remote control. And like the Sony, this was built on a normal RM-95 type remote control. This is built on a normal remote control for, I don't know what, a video recorder or a TV, probably a video recorder. But it's been heavily modified. One thing I really would love to know is whether these special remote controls have the normal IC controlling them, or if they have different special IC and firmware, because it's quite possible that they had the standard chip for the normal remote control, but with maybe just a couple of pins changed, a couple of pins shorted out or similar, to tell it to work in this strange or alternative operation mode. But we may never know. Now, this JVC one, I'll see if we can demonstrate this one with a JVC DVD recorder. Let's get stuck into the manual first. Okay, let's read the instructions. The following remote control units are required to set and cancel jig mode. So jig mode is when you have this JVC DVD recorder in a mode that you can set it up beyond what the normal customer can. So you need, it says, the remote control attached to the product, so not attached, but that came with it, and the jig remote control. So we have both. Right. When the main body is set to jig mode, and when the main body is under jig mode, the remote control unit attached to the product operates only in remote control code 1. Right. Since the main body is in remote control 3 when it is shipped, is it? Okay. And just after its batteries are changed. There aren't any batteries in there. What are you talking about? Remote control 3 needs to be changed to remote control code 1. So it's saying, I think, that needs to be changed. Let's try to follow these instructions. Press 1 and setup on this remote control. Then enter, then release setup. Press the play button on the main body for 5 seconds. And it says DVD 3. Don't know if you can read that, it's very faint. Right, and we want to switch that to 1. Press the stop button on the remote control. It says 1 and it's blinking. So that's the first part I have to do. That was complicated. And that's just using the consumer remote. Now, to display system info or update firmware, you need to put the body into, this is what they call the body, into jig mode. Switch it on. On the remote control attached to the product, do setup to 8 enter. Now it's flashing. Wish you could see it, it's so faint. Turn the main body off and on again. We're in jig mode because we've got flashing colons on the clock, which apparently is not normal for this model. You don't normally have flashing colons there. In fact, we even had flashing colons there between yeah and by, so that's definitely in a weird mode now. That is in jig mode, but that's all been done with the consumer remote. And we need to cancel that with this remote. But let's, now we're in jig mode, let's see what we can do with it first. Display system info. Set the body to jig mode, done that. Transmit 443.8B using a jig remote. Okay, having got this unit into jig mode, and now you need to set the jig remote control up, because by default it just has something about VTR-A on there. You have to go through a special sequence, and it's written here to get it into the jig remote control into jig mode. I mean, why wouldn't you? Remove the battery cover. Set the battery while simultaneously pressing 4, 5 and 6 keys together. This seems like a bit of a palaver. Considering this is supposed to be, you know, a special remote control, why do you have to do this? Oh well. So pressing buttons 4, 5 and 6 together, insert the battery. and then it should come up with 4300. So I think 43 is like the product code, and 43 is default, and that's correct for this. And it's got 00 on there. And now we want to send 8B to the unit. So do I do that when it's switched on? I think. So it's already got 43, so 8, and then B is actually the number 12 button, so it's got in brackets there. So 8B, and then this is the send button here. Aha. And if we look at the output from the unit, we have this system information page, and we can, I think, use one of these remote controls. So I can now use the regular remote control to step round it. I don't know if I could do it with this, maybe, but okay, so we can step round these different things, and some of these look more interesting than they are. So for example, it says we could change the region, but in fact if we go into the manual, we find that changing the region involves using a specially made CDR. I don't know why. And you can also do firmware updates. So I don't believe there's anything I can actually control here. This is, it does say system info. There's no more we can actually do in any of these. We could do factory default. Well, we're not about to do that. You send a special code to do a factory reset, but that would wipe all the programs on the hard disk, so we don't want to do that. Then, as it says, to quit the system info menu, transmit the 8B again. Okay, that was easy. Cancel jig mode, which we do with 439D. So where's the D button? That's that one. 9D, send, and the colon is now firmly lit on there instead of flashing, so it's now out of jig mode. So though we weren't able to really show anything particularly exciting with this remote control, you can see how you can access deeper menus than are normally available to the consumer. Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning something about these very special remote controls. Most people don't even know they exist, and of course they do exist for other products as well. And they allow you to do more things than a normal remote control can. Now, I've got lots more good things coming up, and one of the things I did a few weeks ago was I had a Philips N1502 video recorder in, but I had to abandon it because the heads were ruined. And a kind viewer has sent me, really looking forward to this, beautifully packaged, a set of video heads for an N1502. They'll need testing. If they work, then we can install that in the machine and get it going. I've also bought a new video recorder of a format I've never done before, so that's exciting too. Please do remember to like, share, and especially subscribe, and I'll do a lot more content on audio and video technology in the near future. Bye for now.